Okay, well, Hamp, hey, thanks for showing up tonight, man, and thanks for answering the mail on this one because, like we've talked previously, when I first started thinking about this, there's a handful of people, and you were definitely one of them. So, I really do appreciate you taking that invite and coming out and doing this tonight.
No, thank you. I appreciate it. It's kind of like my retirement speech, feels like.
Yeah. Well, good. Yeah, you could practice it here if you'd like, and put
There
it
you
out
go.
there and let everybody hear it. And we'll ask for comments.
Yes, sir. Yep,
There
yep,
you
yep.
go.
Yeah, so I'm excited.
Awesome, man. Well, all right. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of read the wave types of your career,
Okay.
and then we'll go into your life story after that, and then we'll just kind of take this where it flows.
All right. Good, good, good. Sounds good.
Perfect. Okay, so 29-year Air Force Chief Master Sergeant, and you retired in less than 6 months.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yes, yes,
When
yes.
yeah, when you started that career, you were a C-130 crew chief.
Hmm.
You cross trained over to administration. During that time, you did some time as a first sergeant. After that, your final job, I guess, is the Air Force Handbook 1 program manager.
Yep, yep, yep.
Um, Also, which I didn't know, is if you authored 22 books.
Hmm.
You've also created your own publishing company to help along with authoring all those books. That's a ton of books. You are the founding elder of Spiritual Combatants. And to top it all off, you're a Christian, you're a husband, and you're a father. So, did I really miss anything there? It's a lot.
I'm also a licensed real estate agent in Texas.
Well, there you go. Licensed real estate agent in Texas.
I feel like Heyman on Living Color, where like when they had their little skit, doo, 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 and they're like, Heyman, I got 10 jobs. I'm a
I
baker.
think a lot of us these days, who are getting ready, we had so many jobs. You're just bouncing around from job to job, and then you're just never satisfied. I wonder what that's going to look like for the kids nowadays. But you know, um,
Yeah.
to say that, I went to Starbucks this morning, and the inside was closed, and I asked them, and she's like, "Yeah, my 20-year-olds are just not showing up." I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
So, but
Yeah.
man, lot of jobs. I like it. You seem to be pretty busy.
That's the understatement of the day. Yes. That's for sure.
All right, perfect. Well, if you don't have much to add to that, let's go into letting you introduce yourself, where you're from, and where Hamp began his life, man.
Oh, well, I appreciate it again. Thanks again for inviting me on here. Definitely honored to be able to share this time with you and those who are maybe listening. But Hamp Lee III, I am originally from Compton, California. So I was born in South Central Los Angeles, and I spent most of my time, my first 18 years in Compton, California. So that's kind of where I started out. And there was no heavy military background. My grandfather was in World War II, and he was Hamp Lee Sr., and then my dad is Hamp Lee Jr., but then there was a time when he became Muslim, and then he changed his name to Amir Asmar. So, and then he practiced Islam until I think a little after when Malcolm X returned from his Mecca trip. I think if you've
Hmm.
ever watched the movie, and he's returned back from his Mecca trip, and he's kind of like starting to distance himself from the Nation of Islam. That's when my father didn't really practice too much. So from there, just kind of just growing, and I never thought I'd be in the military. So that was not in the cards, at least for me, what I thought. I didn't really know what I wanted to do, but it's been a little bit of a traumatic childhood, had some bumps in the road, but I think those things really helped to shape who I am or who I become. And as I kind of even journey throughout the military, kind of reaching back to the things that occurred to me in my childhood.
Right. Okay. Yeah. You find a lot of times that your childhood does kind of shape you into what you're doing today, and it's pretty awesome to look back to where you were to where you are, and sometimes, although maybe negative, I think a lot of times you can definitely create a positive out of that, right? What God, what people meant for evil, God meant for good. So that's always good. So you say Compton and South Central, and I know we've talked about this. We talked about this a little bit right before we started, but were you around during the LA riots?
I was a senior in high school. So
Senior.
during those years, my father, so I like to draw, so I started drawing when I was in the 4th grade, and I saw one of my classmates, and he was drawing everything, just outlining, just like he didn't have outline, but he drew like a pencil box, and I was
Right.
like, man, I want to draw just like that. So I started drawing, and my father, he loved to invest in people. Like if he knew you had a certain interest in a certain area, he'd invest in that. When he knew I liked to draw, he'd drive me all over the city to go to art classes. And at one point, he just said we lived at his girlfriend's house across town, so he could send me to schools, magnet schools in Los Angeles, so for visual arts. So by
Yeah.
this time, I was in high school in Los Angeles. So you live in Compton, and my school, Fairfax High School, is on the other side of town, completely outside of town near Hollywood, so maybe about 20, 30 miles away. So I'm in the LA school district during that time during the riot. So we're watching it live. My grandmother, my cousin, we're watching it live as it's happening. And we're like, you can't believe what's going on. But there was a critical moment when the police was not responding. Then they're just kind of standing around. And my cousin was like, they're not doing anything. I'm out.
Yeah.
I didn't see him again for like the weekend. So I don't know what happened at that point, but it's complete, chaos that's going on all around us. And then they shut down all of LA school district, all the LA school district. No one going to school. So my dad tells me at 6:30 in the morning, he's about to go to work. Do not leave this house. Yes, Dad, I'm here. Right. As
Yeah.
soon as he drives off, 30 minutes later, I take his truck, right? He has a Ford Bronco, just like OJ, right? It's just big, but it's the same style that OJ has. I take his truck, and all my friends, other than me, I had a girlfriend that kind of lived close. She lived in Watts, maybe probably about 5 miles away. Other than that, all my friends are on the other side of town. So
Right.
I take my father's truck, and I had a car, but I wasn't taking the car that day. I piled in all my friends, and then we're out on the other side of town. I'm driving around, and in some cases, participating in said actions and things that are going on. And by the time, I mean, it was just like complete mayhem. People were breaking into all type of stores and things like that. And we're driving around. And so now I'm starting to work my way back because I know my father gets home probably about 3:30. So he never knew that I did this. So I
Yeah.
get home. By the time I get home, I stop in a shopping center right down the street from my house. And when I'm stopped in front of the store. Everyone just rushed in. So they're like broke the windows, they rushed in. I got out the car, and it was at that moment I was like, wait a minute. I am here in the riots. Someone could hit me over the head and take my father's car, and there is nothing I can do about it. I'm getting back in this car.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until that moment, because I was by myself, but I dropped my friends off, that I realized the seriousness of where I was. Because, it's complete mayhem. No, almost anything goes during those
Yeah.
points. And I'm like, man, I'm in some trouble. I'm in some real danger right now. So I need to get home. So
Yeah.
I was a few minutes from home. So I just got in the house and acted as if nothing happened. Thankfully, my father did not track his mileage on his car, because if he did, I'd definitely be in trouble. But it was a sad time. And, when you're 18, because I was 18 years
Yeah.
old, you don't really understand the significance of what occurred. You see it and you know that it's a great injustice, but you don't understand some of the larger implications, especially in our local area. We had a
Right.
Foot Locker right down the street in Compton. We had Foot Locker in Compton, and there was a Foot Locker in a Kenny shoe store, and they burned it to the ground. They looted it, burned it to the ground, never rebuilt again. So there was so much infrastructure that was destroyed, but
Yeah.
never returned. Right? They're not going to rebuild again. So it was so much that we lost out on, and I don't think we understood the significance of that. I understand the anger for what had occurred, but then our response wasn't appropriate. My response wasn't appropriate. I mean, I've been doing some things that some other folks were doing, but I was out there,
Yeah.
and but I just didn't see that or understand it. But it was a dangerous time, and a lot of people were hurt, and there was a lot of damage to a lot of property during that
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. I mean, just watching it, on the news, and then watching the kind of the reruns, when they talk about it, it looked like it was pretty crazy. Did any of that ever flow into your neighborhood? Like, or was that just kind of like you were far enough away where, you know, that didn't
Yeah,
really
I was
affect you?
I was far enough away. So I lived off of some people know Rosecrans and Central. So I wasn't on the main street. So
Yeah.
the closest to me was the closest area, shopping areas to me was that shopping center I told you about. And then it's probably not even a mile away from me. And then the Foot Locker. The Foot Locker was less than a mile away from my house.
Yeah.
And they had that there and the McDonald's, I think they I don't know if they can't remember if they looted the McDonald's, but the McDonald's stayed. It wasn't burned down or anything like that.
Yeah. Do they even have Foot Locker anymore? I don't even know if I don't think I've seen one
They're
in a
in
long
malls.
time.
Like when you go to certain malls, like most of us don't go to the mall, but you will find. I saw one when I was in my last duty station. I was at the mall in Montgomery. I saw a Foot Locker, but and they're online. So I mean, we do so much
Yeah.
shopping, and it's rare, right? Because back then, when I was growing up, I was at the mall every weekend. I was at
Yep.
one of the malls somewhere across town. I didn't. I did not stay in Compton. I was always moving about. My friends lived on the other side of town, and so that kind of lended to some of the other things I was getting into. I was a womanizer and dating many women, so it was wild. I was wilding out. So no one knew where I lived, but I knew where everybody else lived. So I was one of the quiet ones where you always had to watch out for. So I'd be like, "Hey, I'll be right back," and go do some things and come back. And hey, what were you doing? Don't worry about it, man. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that. Hey, real quick, I wanted to ask you 3 questions, and kind of since we're on the subject of kind of being around your house and talking about LA, is there a restaurant that you will go to that's, like, only like, every time if I don't know if you go home, but if you were to go back, to LA, if there's a restaurant that you have to go to?
It may be depending on where how I feel. There was a place that's called the Red Onion. They don't have them anymore. They have Red Onion, Soup Plantation. Those man, I loved it. But probably one of the places one of my favorite was Sizzler, and they had this great like this cheese toast that they made. I was like, that was awesome, and they had a great buffet. So that's probably one of my spots that I would go to there. Red Onion, maybe what a not Whataburger. It wasn't Whataburger. Not In and Out. So it's not. Ah, it was another burger joint, but it wasn't that one. There was a place called Naka's Burgers. It was a real small hole in the wall right across the street from Centennial High School in Compton, California. Like, but they had like some of the greatest burgers that you would ever taste. I mean, bar none, better than In and Out, better than I think it was Whataburger, maybe
Yeah.
Whataburger. One not thinking about, but those normally the spots I'll go to. I don't go home very often, and I don't go home often, and it's well known among my family and friends because I don't like the way I have to change my mindset to go to Los Angeles, right? There's a certain mindset that you need to be in. I don't like being in that mindset. I left Los Angeles for a reason. I don't really like going home because I don't want to think about or have to deal with some of the things I face there. So
Yeah.
unfortunately, I just like, I ain't going there. I ain't going. I'll be there like 3 days at the max, 4 days at the max. Last time I think I was there when my father passed away. So that was almost 5 years ago that I was home. So it hasn't been very often.
Yeah. Um, before I ask the next one, has it changed since then? Since you've left? Like, so that 5 years ago when you went back, has it changed at all?
Yeah, I think it's changed because one of the major changes is they have the metro. So the metro was there before I left, but they've expanded the metro. But everything's still like tight, all on top, everybody on top of each other. So
Yeah.
that was one of the major changes that you kind of see. But for the most part, everything looked the same. So when I get back home, I know where everything's at. I mean, I can drive to wherever. And everything comes back to me just real quickly. So.
Nice. Okay, awesome. Real quick, I'm gonna ask 2 more quick questions, then we'll take a break, and then we'll continue on with Compton and then move it on to college and stuff like that. So, all right, which do you prefer? So, since you're a big author, I would assume, and you know what that does, but I assume that you read quite a bit. So, do you prefer the ebook, an ebook reader, or like just your standard I hate to say that, oh, just a normal book, but a book.
I prefer a normal book because I like to write in books. So I
Mhm.
write in all of my books. I like notes, but it's easier sometimes for me to be more on the audible side because I can digest it quicker.
Yeah.
So where I love the book and the write on the book and kind of feel the pages, most times I'll jump to audible. But yeah, and that question is writing for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I don't think I own an ebook. So I kind of like the turn the pages.
Turn the page, yeah, turn the
Yeah.
page, yeah. Yeah,
Like,
lately, it's like I try to I stack up a whole bunch of books, and they're all just stacked up somewhere. I'm like, "Man, I need to read that book." But oftentimes, I don't have time, and
mhm.
so that's why I went to Audible, because then I can kinda digest it in the car. The car is like the place where I pray, I cry, you do all your things, I educate myself, so I spend a lot of time kinda investing there.
Yeah, perfect. Perfect. All right. And being such a huge author of so many books, beside yourself, which author is your favorite? You would just
Mm.
pick their book up, or you have all their books, or you know.
I like a book that challenges my thinking. One of the books that challenged my thinking was Rich Dad Poor Dad, right, by Robert
Mhm.
Kiyosaki. I think that's one when you're talking about investing and things like that.
Mhm.
Something that really challenges my perspective. So if there's one, and I haven't read that book in a long time, so just thinking about that. So when a book comes to mind, is that book, because it's been so revolutionary for me, and such his concepts are such that it makes me think twice about finances and things like that. But I really like that book. It's really good. And so then I kind of share that with others, because as an investor, my real estate investor myself, that's kind of like the basic. Actually, I shared that book today with someone probably a couple hours ago one of the websites I'm on, Bigger Pockets.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, I remember you shared a book with me years ago, Stripes, which
Mhm.
I think I actually I think I actually handed down when I retired. So
Oh, oh, Stripes! I tell you, yeah, yeah. We'll get in the story about how Stripes came about.
well, perfect. So let's take a quick break, and
Okay,
then when we get back, we'll kick it back in into Compton, in South Central, and the drawing, because I know that you said you like to do a lot of drawing, and you're going to those schools for that. So I want to kind of dive into more of that, and then we'll continue on. So we'll be right back. All right,
okay, sounds
all right,
good.
man. All right. Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. I'm glad you're here. I couldn't do this without you. To help show support, please hit the like button, subscribe to the show, and leave a comment. Your support and your feedback mean the world to me. Thanks again for listening. All right, Hamp. Hey, we're back from the break. And so, if I recall, I just asked you a few questions, just kind of off the cuff about your favorite author, um, whether you're an ebook guy or a book and that stuff. So, but before I asked you those, we were talking about kind of like your senior year and things like that. And you mentioned before you were you were going to magnet schools because of your drawing. So did that go anywhere? Did you did you draw comic books? Did you, where did that take you?
Well, my love for drawing was always T-shirts,
Mhm.
and so around that time, I was dating someone that started a T-shirt company, and they liked my designs, and I had a chance to see some of my designs on a T-shirt, and it was like the most amazing thing. Like they didn't really do right by me, so some things didn't go right with that, and I was like, man, I was a very loyal person. I'm a very loyal individual,
Yeah.
but it didn't go right. But the love for drawing and for T-shirts, to see a shirt, an image that I designed on a shirt, man, I loved it. So from there, I still draw, like even like this shirt. This shirt is something I draw. I have another one, but there's been a lot of designs I've done over the years. I've done a lot of graphic design, logo design, web design. I've designed various coins, military coins, designed programs for awards and things like that. So it's kind of gone um, in a lot of different directions. I don't want to do it as a business, only because it seems that I lose interest. The love of drawing is lost, because then you're focused more on, you're giving a client what they desire, but then it's not like, hey, this is what I feel that God has given me for you, and here
Right.
it is. It's just it's a different change. So it's like the fun is taken from it, and it was a great way for me to relax. I used to draw almost every day. I try to draw image a day, and it was very relaxing. So I definitely want to get back to it. And I don't hand draw as much. I do a lot of computer drawing now, but I want to get back to it.
Okay. What was like your favorite thing to draw? What was the thing that, you just pick up a piece of paper and you just start to doodle?
Garfield. I started
Garfield?
with Garfield. Yeah, so once I got going, I started drawing different characters. I couldn't draw hands, so everybody had their hands behind their back at first, starting out
Yeah.
in fifth grade, and it was Garfield. So I learned how to draw Garfield. I probably can draw Garfield without even thinking right now.
Yeah.
I've drawn Garfield so many times, but it just kind of helped just to practice, to get in the reps. And then the magnet schools, once I went to magnet schools, and I kind of learned the other mediums, right? You get a chance to learn oil pastel, oil paint, watercolor. You're doing the chalk. You're doing all these different things to kind of see what you like. But I'm more of a hip hop person, so my
Mhm.
genre is the hip hop genre, graffiti. I didn't do any spray painting on walls, but that's my genre. It's been my genre for since I was young. Even now, I listen to Christian rap music, right? So
Yeah.
so it's just where my love is. I love the style. I love the art, and I've always kind of been in that frame of reference there. So even with my shirts today, a lot of my shirts have the same type of style too. So
Yeah. Gosh, what was I gonna say? So what was so hard about drawing hands back then?
I don't know. I don't know. Maybe it was just I don't know what it was about the fingers. I really learned how to draw hands by looking at my own. So I would look at my own, and I kind of, if I started wanting to grip it, like, okay, what does that look like? And I kind of draw it. Or I had other images. A lot of times we'll take source work from magazines. So you'll
Mhm.
look at magazines and kind of flip through them, like, oh, okay, I like the way that looks. And there's other art books that you can buy that kind of has those images. There's one in particular, probably made in the 60s. I had it when I was young, and then I had to track it down again. So I have it now. And then it has a great reference where, like, they'll have like 100 eyes on the page and 50 hands in different ways, just to kind of give you a point of reference.
Gotcha. Gotcha. I mean, that's awesome. I like to doodle. I don't draw very well. Not very artistic in that aspect. So
I'll have a gift. We all
yeah.
have a gift somewhere. So it's something.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. So what happened after high school?
So in high school, my senior year, right? So when I get to high school, I'm
Yeah.
always tall. I was always tall. I wasn't always the tallest. There was one kid that was always tall. I see him like in sixth grade, he's taller than me. I see him in seventh, eighth, but I shoot up from like 6'1" to 6'5", and by the 10th grade, I'm 6'5". So I was like, man, maybe I should play basketball or play some
Mhm.
type of sport. And when going in there with my friend, we are going from junior high together. And I was like, man, we're gonna play football or basketball. I was like, man, I want to play basketball. I want to play football because, I mean, I may get hit. I'm not trying to get hit and get cracked. So I'll just
Yeah.
play basketball. So I played basketball, and I wasn't really good at offensively because I just started playing, but I could stop anybody. I could run as fast as the guards could run because my family background is track. So I have a lot of track runners. So in my family, my father ran track. I had an uncle that he was the track coach for University of Arizona, and he was going to be the 1984 one of their track coaches for the Olympics.
Nice.
Um, and so it runs in my family. If I could have ran track, if they had track at that school, I'd been running track for sure.
Yeah.
But I didn't. But that ended up giving me an opportunity to receive a basketball scholarship. And
Okay.
it was a Division II school, still staying in the area, right down the street in Carson, California from my house. And so I saw it as a great opportunity. My dad and I really didn't talk about school, what we were going to do, what was going to happen.
Yeah.
So that was a great opportunity. But during the time I spent my year, when everybody's like, hey, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? And people talk about being in the military. I try to talk everybody out of the military. Like, man, you should go to college, and that you shouldn't be doing that. And
Yeah.
then behold, I go to college and I spend my first year there. And the second year, the first day of practice, I hyperextended and hyperflexed my wrist. So that means you're bending it further both ways beyond what the normal range of motion is on a
Yeah.
Friday. I come back on Monday, like nothing, I didn't feel anything, everything was good. But when I grabbed the basketball, I couldn't dribble it. And it just
Oh.
like limp. I tried to shoot the ball and it just kind of fell off my hands. I'm like, what in the world? My coach yelled at me, told me to go into the athletic trainer's office. They sent me to get it looked at, and I needed surgery. And I just, during that whole year, I didn't have a good experience with my coach at all because of that.
Yeah.
And they rushed my rehab. I came back and played in enough games to use my eligibility. But I think if I had greater maturity, or maybe some more mature people around me, like, hey, look, just, this isn't the way you need to go about this, right? This person is providing an opportunity for you to receive education. And also, because I knew I wasn't going to I wasn't going to be in the NBA. I knew I probably wouldn't play overseas. I knew I wasn't that type of player. So I was like,
Yeah.
just being realistic is an opportunity to earn a degree. But at the end of the year, he said that, hey, we're not going to renew your scholarship. Even though my rehab went great, I was doing great as far as offensively, kind of getting everything together. But I was really ashamed by what had transpired. All my friends were basketball players, and I stayed in my room for like a month and a half. I wouldn't come out. And during that time, one of the athletic trainers, she wanted to be in the NBA as an athletic trainer for a while. And she knocked on the door like once a week, like, Hamp, you got to come. We took a humanities class. You got to come back to school. And I just listened to one album all day. I was just riddled with shame and guilt and fear. Right. I
Yeah.
didn't know what I was going to do. And I ended up going back to school. And that year, right, you thinking, in hindsight, like, it's free school. Go back to school. And I ended up only salvaging one class because they said, hey, whatever your grade is at the end of the year, that's what you get. Right. Nobody would ever go to the class. But at the
Yeah.
end of the year, act. So I finished there and just couldn't put anything together. Right. I was trying to find some way to get back into school and I couldn't. I moved in with my grandmother. I had a real bad falling out with my father. And during that time, I asked him, like, hey, would you help me kind of get some art supplies? Because I can put together a portfolio to get an art scholarship. He was like,
Right.
nope. And I was like, well, can you take me off your taxes, so then I can at least get a little bit extra money? Nope. And I'm like, what are you going to do? He's like, I'm not doing anything. And about a couple weeks later, he tells me that, you're going to end up in jail, and unemployment line and welfare. Right. And I was like, something like in the pit of my stomach, like I've never done anything. Well, I've done some things deserving of those, but I haven't been like caught doing those. So
Yeah.
and so something at the bottom of my stomach, I just like, who in the hell do you think you are? And I just went off. I just cussed him out on the spot. And my grandfather drove up, was like, why are you talking to your father like that? I was like, I was so angry. But it just lit this fire in me that I wanted to prove him wrong.
Right.
That I'm not going to ever sit in some place where I'm going to hear him say, I told you so.
Right.
So they're really trying to work on trying to do better with my life. My girlfriend at the time was talking about selling drugs and credit card scams while while we're watching across the street. We're watching the house be raided, the drug house be raided. And I'm like, are you for real? Are we having this conversation while you're sitting here watching the drug house be raided? Oh no. Other people around me are doing all type of illegal activity. And I'm like, I can't go to jail and be somebody's wife. I'm like, no.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, for real. I'm
Yeah.
like, go, like I have the same demeanor. I can't go to LA County like this. I have
Yeah.
friends that went to LA County and family members, they crying on the phone. I'm like, oh no, I ain't gonna make it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I was trying to find some way out. And the military came up and it was like, this is my last legal option, but I kept trying other things. Nothing worked. I have a couple of jobs lined up and my car won't start. Right. And so it's like, I'm going into the military. And so I was about to go in the military, join the Marines. And my girlfriend, man, she was like, Hamp, you're not Marine material. I like, thank you. I think back about that. I'm like, you're right. You're very right. So, and I ended up joining the military. And so I thought that I would do about 8 years in the military. I just wanted to finish my degree.
Yeah.
Really, I wanted to do something positive because at the time, in my mentality, like, I'd rather die on the battlefield, right,
Mhm.
than, you don't know what you don't know, right? I don't know anything about the military. I'd rather do that than be in the streets and die. And my father says, look, this is what happened to you. So it was a way for me to go back to school and to finish. So I thought I'd do maybe 8 years at the most. So I was just wide open. It's like, I didn't want to join the military. So I know some people are very patriotic. I don't, people join for different reasons. That's why we have the different advertisements and things like that. But my reason was just trying to do something positive with my life.
Yeah. And you hear that quite a bit. You talk to a lot of guys, "Oh, I had nothing else to do," or, "Look, if I stayed in my hometown, I was gonna be in trouble. I was
Hmm.
gonna go to jail, I was gonna die," and then they come make something out of themselves. And also on top of it, you hear, "Oh, I'm only gonna do 1 enlistment." You say 8 years, 21 years later, you're still in, you're getting ready to
I'm,
retire,
I'm
so
still in. You do the full load. I think God laughs about that one. I
yeah.
got something for you, son.
Yeah, yeah, that's
Watch
awesome.
it.
So the Marines were on your radar, so then how did the Air Force come in?
Well, the Marines were on my radar because that's all I knew, right? You
Yeah,
don't, when you don't have any background about the military, you hear about Army, Marines. You
yeah,
don't, really hear about the Air Force or the Navy or the
Hmm.
Coast, definitely not the Coast Guard, right? And there was an Air Force base in Los Angeles, and I didn't even know until the recruiter talked about it. I was like, I literally worked like 2 miles away from the base, from that base,
Right.
and I was like, "There's an Air Force base here? Are you for real? Really?" Right? Base, and I was like, I didn't even know this place existed. But until my girlfriend was like, you need to check out the Air Force, right? And so the Air Force recruiter, of course, is in the back building, the back office. They had an area, a shopping center area where they had all the different services, and of course, Marines and an Army on the front, Navy somewhere in the middle, and then the Air Force guys in the back.
Yeah.
And I just told him I wanted to work outside. I didn't really care, I didn't really. I was like, I don't want to be inside. I want to work outside. He's like, okay, I'll give you what you want, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
so there you have it. I was like, I need to leave as soon as possible. Right. I wasn't trying to stay. I was in a delayed entry program for about 3 months trying
Right.
to find something. And with the Marines, they were like, it's a tank mechanic. That's all we got for the next year and a half. I was like, tank mechanic. My friend of mine was like, I don't know what you're gonna do on the outside with that job. so,
Yeah.
so everything worked out. It gave me what I wanted. I wanted to be outside. He helped me to be outside. So I
There you
can't complain
go.
about that. But I'm not mechanically inclined. So there's going to be a challenge there.
Yeah.
there
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. So, did you choose the C-130 crew chief, or did
well,
that get chosen for you?
I guess it was kind of chosen for me because I wanted to be outside. And when recruiters do a great job of selling any type of position that's there. And I was like, oh, okay, that sounds great. Right. You
Yeah.
get a
Yeah.
chance to travel. And for me, I was like, if I'm going to be in the military, I want to see the world. So I want to see as much as I can. And you're talking about being able to be an aircraft. I don't know what a C-130 even, I didn't even know what it was. I didn't
Right.
know what it was until I got to tech school. And I was like, hey, we're going to our first day. And I'm like, what's a C-130? And they're like, that's right there. That right there. I was like, that's a C-130? I was like, when can we retrain? Literally while I'm walking, they said 36 months. And on the day, the 36th month, at 07:30, I'm sitting very quietly at the retraining office to
Hmm.
change. So I knew at that point, I was like, okay, this is probably more than what I signed up for. But hey, I did my job to the very best of my ability. I didn't complain about it. I did everything to what I could, but I wasn't mechanically inclined. So I struggled as far as what to do. So I'm always in the TOs, and if you know folks in maintenance, they're not always in the TOs. They
Yeah.
should. But they always
Yeah.
not.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've never been in the maintenance world, but definitely have heard, and I've seen it all over. People talking about in the TOs or the technical orders.
Mhm.
Um, and being a private pilot, trying to get my license. They have those TOs, not so much on the mechanical side, um, but yeah, I mean, you look through that, like look through the manual for the answer. It's in there, right? So you
Yes,
didn't
sir.
like it.
Yeah, it just wasn't. It wasn't. I didn't know. It wasn't that I didn't like it because I love the camaraderie. There were times when I get cussed out on the flight line all the time, right?
Yeah.
And it just lets you know where a person is, right? And so I actually, I know this. We're talking about Christian, but I appreciated being someone telling me where they were rather than the office politics. So you just
Right.
know this is where people at. Everybody's
Yeah.
going. If the shaft's coming, everybody gonna get it at the same time. We're all gonna grumble. But it was a great camaraderie with everyone, especially as you travel and you do different things together. See things. I love that. But I just struggled with the job. But the job also because I was so afraid, right? It's serious business. You're flying aircraft and you're taking care of the mission here. I'm
Mhm.
always reading TOs like this, especially when we were servicing liquid oxygen. I'm like, okay, I'm reading one line at the by line, and I found an error and it was a major error. I was like, wait a minute, they skipped a step. And so I talked to my boss about it, and he's like, hey, just put in a TO change. And next thing I know, a TO chain comes out, and it's in my hand across the Air Force, right, for all the changes that come
Yeah.
in for one issue. So I thought that was one of the great points there, trying to, just trying to do my job and do it well.
Yeah. That's awesome, man. That's awesome. So 36 months later, you're sitting at the retraining
Oh, yeah, I'm there.
and they come in, they're like, "Can we help you? We're not even open yet."
I'm like, I'm here to retrain. Take all the time you need. I'm
Yeah.
like, take all the time you need, right? I'm like, I am here to retrain. So then they asked me, well, what type of job you want? I need to be inside.
Yeah.
It's like, well, actually, sir, your highest score is administration. So, and they were, my lowest score was actually maintenance. So they're trying to figure like, why are we even having this discussion? You should have just went into administration. So
Yeah.
then I chose administration, and I was like, well, can I just stay here? I was in Japan. I was in Jakarta. I was like, can I just stay here? Right? I'm thinking like I could, I'm not used to PCS and they're doing anything. And they're like, yeah, sure, you can stay here. Cool. My family stays in base housing. I just go to retrain and I come back.
Yeah.
So I leave a senior airman crew chief. I come back as a staff sergeant administrator. So I had a line number. And so I knew like if I stayed in maintenance, I could make rank really fast.
Right.
But those years, like from tech to master, would be very hard on me. So I could probably make it my first time. And I was debating, because that's when you're going to be out. You'll be a dedicated crew chief, and I may struggle harder. So I was like, let me not test that. Let me not try to make rank fast, and then I struggle in some other areas. So,
Yeah.
so I just cross trained. I thought it may be best suited for my skill set and what I can bring to the service.
Yeah. Did had you written any books at this time, or
Oh,
no?
I
Not yet?
thought I was a book author. By this time, I was a Christian for about 4 years.
Okay.
So,
Well, let's talk about
became
that. How'd that happen?
man. So this is definitely faith journey. So my first experience with God, I was 7 years old. So
Mhm.
7 years old, I'm playing at a park down the street from my house. And at the park, there's a library right next to it, and there's a church right behind me. Never been in church. I've been in a mosque before. My dad, I remember one time going to a mosque, and you got to throw your shoes in this giant pile, and then there were like women on one side and men on the other side, and it had like this, like the fake grass, the turf,
Yeah.
artificial turf, and so then everyone was kneeling. That's all I remember. So I've never been in church, but then when I'm playing and I turn around and I can see inside this church. So I saw these long benches. Well, I'm just going to say as I saw it because I didn't know what they were pews.
Right. Yeah.
They're long benches with red covering. I saw colored windows, thin colored windows, and I saw this platform with a guy in a gray suit leaning to his left. And I heard a voice, clear as day, you are to be a preacher. All right. And I was like, okay. I accepted that was God. And I was like, okay. And just went back to playing, not knowing like one day it's going to come to be. So I've been married. By this time I was married probably just several months. My daughter was 3 months old. I go from Japan to Alaska, TDY for a month. And there
Okay.
was a gentleman there. He worked in sheet metal. But by this time, I was off the flight line. I was working in debrief. So I'm not on the flight line, just helping to debrief the pilots when they come back, right? Just processing paperwork and kind of doing those things. So I'm inside. So he invites me to church, and I'm like, I don't really want to go to church, right? I'm just thinking like, I
Yeah.
just want to be chilling. That ain't what I'm thinking about. But the more he's talking about it, I'm listening, but I'm watching him during this time. So now we're in Alaska. I'm just, now I'm the lowest ranking person. So I'm just riding. But they drive around in a truck in the government vehicle to like almost every adult triple X store that's in the city, like every last
Yeah.
one. I can't say I got out, I was getting out myself, but I was
Right.
watching them the whole time. Right. And so I'm looking at him because you invite me to church and I want to see what you're doing.
Mhm.
Every time he never got out the truck, I'm watching what he's doing. And so he already had this demeanor of a character of honor, right? You're just riding around. He's a staff sergeant. I think he was a staff sergeant at the time, right? He's
Yeah.
not the highest person. Of course, this is illegal. Of course, there are tons of illegal that's
Yeah.
on this trip, right? Every time you go, like with crew chiefs, you're always going to either some triple X store or a strip club, right? That's kind of what folks are doing. But I'm watching it all the time. So by this time, I'm like, okay, you know what? I'll go because I see something different in you than everybody else that's here. So
Mhm.
I go to church. I'm like, oh, wow, man, it's really good. I really liked it. I go to his room one day. All of a sudden, like Sodom and Gomorrah's on. And I hear like all these voices like, you're being set up. You're being set up. I'm like, how do I just go to his room and Sodom and Gomorrah's on? But I
Yeah.
go the next week. I think it's our last week. And the pastor talks about being connected to the power source.
Mhm.
And I'm like, man, I need to be connected to the power source. So I called my wife. I'm gonna be a Christian, right? Because
Yeah.
we had a lot of challenges in our relationship, and I was like, because at the time I wasn't thinking like Jesus is Lord and Savior, and He died for my sins, He's Son of God. That wasn't on my mind. I just thought like Jesus can fix my marriage.
Right.
Right. And so I'm coming home and her supervisor was a pastor. I'm like, I'm coming to church. And a month later, I became a Christian.
Mhm.
And but I didn't have certain understanding that I needed to have about salvation, things like that. And I don't fault anybody about that. I think sometimes that's just our culture and kind of how we do things, kind of how we run, how we do church and manage church sometimes.
Yeah.
So that was kind of how I got my start in the church from there.
Nice. Yeah, I think it can be tough. And I think a lot of times, man, and I was just talking about this earlier today, is sometimes Christians are the most judgy people, and you go there as a young guy, as a young Christian, and you're expecting these things, and maybe you just don't know, and then people are kind of judging you, like, well, what do you mean you're coming to church? You don't know what this. And it's like, well, I kind of need a mentor in this
Mhm,
because I don't know how to start. A friend of mine, we sat in my car and talked, and then I came home, and as a matter of fact, I called Tom Broadbent, the guy, my very first interview, and I called him. I was like, "Hey, man," I was like, "I got this friend who's interested in reading the Bible. He just doesn't know where to start." And I was like, Tom's a good friend of mine and a good spiritual mentor. I was like,
mhm,
What do I tell him?" And so I was kind of leading him that way, so he doesn't just get turned off as like, "Man, there's this 66 books, 2,000 pages.
mhm,
Where do I start?" Sometimes I don't understand what they're saying, and depending on the version of the Bible you have, right, will depend on how those words are read, and you're like, man, I mean, people reading the Bible and studying the Bible for years sometimes just don't really understand the context all the time, right? So, talking to him, and I think just having that good mentorship uh, help get you kick started into it. So,
yeah. Well, I think sometimes, well, church has this its own ecosystem, and it's kind of like we're all family, and we all know, kind of like it, like when you're dating and you bring in, like, hey, I want you guys to meet my fiance, right?
yeah,
And fiance is like you have all these nuances, you have all these sayings you have together, these stories and memories that that other person doesn't share. And oftentimes the family doesn't open their arms to welcome this person in. They're like, either you get in where you fit in, or you're just going to be out there on your own. And
yeah,
and I don't think we do it intentionally,
right,
but we have the lingo, and depending on what type of church you go to, right? Like in my church, this is what I wore. This is why I preached in today, right? This is
yeah,
exactly what I wore. I have some black jeans. This is why I preached in. Some other churches, three-piece suit. You have certain things that you're seeing that other people, you may, like, coming in, you don't understand. And so I didn't
yeah,
understand those things, but I don't fault them. But as a pastor myself now, then I want to make sure that I'm teaching those. I want to speak to the people that I'm trying to reach, and so this is what I wear. I don't wear a suit unless I'm going to some other church where it's expected to wear a suit, or unless the Lord may tell me. But to try to help to bridge that gap, so to speak.
right. All right. So you're new to Christianity, right? You call home. Where does that take you? Like, um, when did you really start understanding the meaning behind being a follower of Christ?
Maybe from the jump. I mean, I was very zealous. So like 4 or 5 months in, I'm talking. There's another crew chief. He's a minister at the chapel, on the base chapel, and
Mhm.
I'm like, I tell him, like, I was like, how do I get a chance to speak? He was like, "What are you talking about?" I was like, "I got this desire to say something." He was like,
Yeah,
"What would you say?" I was like, "I don't know." I was like, but I have this strong desire to speak. And
right.
so he starts talking about callings, and you got to have a call to ministry, and hear from the Lord and all these things. And I was just like, why I gotta do all that? And I just got something to say. I
Yeah,
didn't, I didn't know, right? I didn't understand it. So this process, I like tortured myself for 6 months about whether or not God was calling me to preach. And because
right,
I understood the significance and the seriousness of it, I just didn't want to. I had this desire, right? The desire was there to preach. I didn't know what I would preach on, but it was there. And I had long forgot about the vision that I had when I was 7. I mean, that thing was long gone until after I accepted the call, right? So
right,
it just gets to the point where I'm like, I'm going to accept the call, because I was going back and forth. I would put myself through a whole lot. And as soon as I do that, so many people came up like, "Oh, we knew you were called. God had called us, told us that." And I was like, "Where were you like 2 months ago?" But then God reminded me of the vision. So now I'm in church. Within a year, I accept a call to ministry on my father's birthday, right? And and then I was off to races. So I almost immediately went into youth ministry from
right.
that point. and I was at the chapel for about a year. But my wife and I, we didn't see eye to eye on church, and I was like, okay, well, I'll leave the church, right, and we can go to another church. Maybe you be comfortable, because she didn't like, I was doing a lot of ministry, so I was like, okay, maybe I just need to kind of sit down. So then I go to the other church. So we moved from the chapel to a church off the installation, but still, primarily American. And so when we get there, they already know I'm a youth minister. And I was like, well, I'm just here to kind of be with my wife. And then
Yeah.
after a while, the call comes and I accept it. And so now I'm running in their youth ministry as well. And by the time I wanted to sit down, I was like, man, this isn't where I need to be. And even the Lord is telling me, like, you need, like, remind me of scripture, like, I need to stay home, right? You need to
Right.
take care of your family. This is what you need to do. But I had this zealousness. And then they talked about paying me. And I accepted it, but I shouldn't. And there was a lot of weeks where I was like just dead tired. Man, I would
Yeah.
just so much work, right? I would spend my days, because I had a key. I love having a key, and I loved going to the church at off times when nobody was there to pray and to worship. But there was a lot of Sundays where I was the last person in church, and I just sit there exhausted, just completely wiped out. And
Yeah.
then I'm like, all right, well, let's do it again. So I thought that was me serving the Lord in this sacrifice, even though the Lord's like, Hamp, sit down, right? Because
Yeah.
my life wasn't as together as it needed to be. And I write about this in the book. So I have a book, my first book, Can You Spare a Few Minutes, kind of describes all of the mistakes I was making. I was making several mistakes. I almost got into an adulterous relationship. My wife kind of found out about it and kind of talked to the pastor about it. So much stuff. I was just making so many mistakes time
Hmm.
after time. And it came to a point where I had this level of exhaustion, and I wound up passing out. Like, my wife and I was so frustrated one morning. I was up at like 2 in the morning trying to prepare a lesson. And she just asked me, like, when you coming to bed? And I just snapped. Right. And then from there, she didn't know what was going on. So she calls the military police, and we're on base. And so then they just put me in a cool down room.
Right.
So I go to church and I come back, and I go back to the cool down room, and my supervisor comes to the door. And
Hmm.
so she was a senior master sergeant at the time, master sergeant, she master sergeant. And so now I'm talking to her, and next thing you know, I'm on the floor and I passed out, completely just passed out. So I spent the night in the hospital. Lord's trying to talk to me. And I was like, man, I gotta let this go, And even when I talked to the pastor about letting it go, like, he's like, well, can you still do like a little bit more? I was like, I don't know if I have much more. Right, my family life is going bad. There's things that's going on, and by this time, several months later, my wife leaves. She's like, I'm leaving. I'm out. Right. So
Yeah.
she was active duty, and then she separated from the military, went into reserves, but she went back home.
Yeah.
So she goes home, and we're arguing the whole time. And I really think, my marriage didn't survive those. We were married for 23 years, but my marriage did not survive those first 4 years. What I did in those first 4 years, and what had transpired, I think just kind of created such a wedge in between us. There was already things we were already dealing with personally, but I think that didn't help.
Yeah.
So we're arguing about her coming back, and it gets to the point where she says, "Okay, one day I'm coming back." And I'm like, "What?" And we were arguing like all summer. So,
Yeah.
but a week before she comes back, the Lord says, "Separate yourself from church." And I'm like, "What? What about Hebrews 10:25?" Right? And the Lord says, "Okay, what's in you is enough to sustain you." And he was talking about the Holy Spirit, but I didn't know that at the time. He said,
Yeah.
"Fellowship with one person, fellowship with one group, you'll fulfill Hebrews 10:25." So she comes back, and that's what I do. So when I separate from church, I'm thinking like people would understand. They would, rally around me. Man, they were like, what about Hebrews 2025? And we're out. They completely left me. Because this
Yeah.
was the first time I really heard from God, and I'm stepping out to be obedient. I haven't been, right, because I'm so zealous about ministry, and I have this incorrect perception about it, because I'm trying to get after the work. But in this season of my life, God was like, build your family first. And that wasn't where I was at. So God was like, sat me down. He was going to be my teacher from here on out. And that's what he told me. I'm your teacher. The Holy Spirit is going to teach you. So now I'm out of church, but now he begins to share with me everything that I need to do and how
Right.
I need to minister to my wife, what I need to do personally. And so everything, all of this I'm saying is in the book. So then, Can You Spare a Few Minutes? You can download it for free. So then I'm building up not only that, but also the basis for ministry. Because then I took about 5 years from '99 to 2004 to build a repository about over 500 scriptures, topics
Wow.
of scripture. And so that I use that group of scriptures to this day. And it's really, that was like the foundation for all of my teaching, everything. I use that reference all the time, but just that going through all those scriptures really helped me over the years. But for almost our entire relationship, when we were together, other than a couple of times, I was always out of church.
Mm,
But if I was away and I went to South Korea, I was in church, preaching, teaching, and doing all type of things.
okay.
So that was kind of, it was interesting. So it was this interesting term, but a lot of that was based on the errors that I made in ministry. And I think really when it comes down to it, a lot of times we just want to be like everybody else.
Yeah.
And I want to be like everybody else. And some of my preaching was kind of taken, it wasn't proper exegesis. And so I was kind of going a different direction because I want to be liked, and God took me off that path. No, I'm not sure where I would be had God not intervened the way that he did.
Yeah. And that's awesome. Yeah. Um, God does amazing things, man, and he puts you on a road that he wants you on, right? Because it's his will, not yours.
Yeah.
So, and that's kind of a hard lesson I've learned throughout my career. And it's I hate to say a tough pill to swallow sometimes, but it's like, you wanted something so bad, but it's not what he wanted, So it's like, okay, you got to sit back, and it takes a lot to say, like, okay, you're right, you know. And then as years pass, you really look back and like, man, where would I have been if I would have went down this road?
Oh
You
yeah, it's
know,
been bad. Yeah,
yeah,
it's been bad. So I'm thankful for his intervention. There was things I need to learn, and it helped me along the way. So I've been in Christ 27 years, and still to this day, I've spent more than half of it outside of the four walls of church, but still ministering. I still ministering, writing. By this time, I did write my first book. So, Can You Spare a Few Minutes About Marriage was my first book. It took me like 2 years to write. I mean, I can write a book now in a month's time, depending on the size. It didn't take me that long now, but
yeah,
learning, I have a system now, but then it took me a long time. So I was still ministering. I was still preaching, still teaching. There was a pastor that kind of watching over me. I could tell he was watching me. Like it was part of the group, the men's group on base on Friday mornings. We would come at 6 in the morning. And so I was attending regularly, but he'd be like, hey, there's this opportunity for you to speak here. Hey, come do this. I was like, okay. I was like, I see what you're doing. I see you watching out for me and just trying to make sure that I'm in a good space. And, so I appreciate that, because a lot of people just left, and God told me
mm,
not to be mad at them, because that's what, you don't understand. You're not in an ecosystem anymore, right? So then how many people do we see leave church, but we never talk to them again, right? They're the one sheep that may have left. They may not have gone to another church. They may have left church, but we don't
right,
always go back to say, hey, what happened to this person? Or we call them like, hey, man, I haven't seen you, what's going on? Just checking up, just checking in, right? I'm
yeah,
not trying to tell you to come to our church, but just make sure you stay connected to Christ, because some people may have some type of church hurt, and church hurt is really hard for a lot of individuals to deal with, including myself, because I experienced church hurt in that. I skipped out a lot in that, what I just told you in a short time.
yeah,
But one of the issues with church hurt is that we have an expectation of a person, of a preacher, a pastor, a man or woman of God, that they will have they'll be have integrity, honor, they'll follow God, they'll be obedient to him, and thereby, taking care of me and being loving toward me. And so when we don't receive that from another Christian, especially a pastor, then it creates this huge wound in our lives that takes a long time to heal. But God wanted to do that in our lives. So he separated me to reset me and to put me on his path, which was definitely my story. And I talked to some of my friends. My friends would tell me I'm the one Christian that's always like way out there. They're like, if there's a person that's way out there, it's Hamp. It's you.
nice. Well, perfect. Hey, man, let's take another quick break. I gotta grab some water real fast, and then when we come back from the break, we'll pick up there. Uh, at this point, have you already cross trained over to admin? And you
Yes,
were
I've been
already
in
doing that?
admin. So by this time, I was already in admin. Probably, and we're talking 2002. I was probably in admin for about maybe a few years. So I definitely had some experiences there that continued to shape my mentoring journey. So how I began to become a mentor began during my cross training, when I tried my first assignment as an admin.
Perfect. Sweet. Let's pick it up there here in a couple minutes, and Um, yeah, we'll just pick it up there after this break.
All right, sounds good.
All right, man. All right. All right, so we're back from the break, man. And we were just talking about right before we got off. You had already cross trained over to admin. You're getting more involved in the church. You're starting to you find your calling. I think what we were talking about is you're more out of the church when you're at home, but you're in church on the TDYs on those temporary duty assignments.
Mhm.
Yeah. So where do we go from there?
Well, we can double back to the admin portion. So,
Yeah.
I hope in what I'm sharing about my beginnings, and a lot of us sometimes misread what God may want us to do. We get zealous and we run out there. And that was my story. I ran out there. And right now I'm in running mode. Like God wants me running, focused, running, whereas previously, like I need you set and just
Yeah.
about being obedient to his voice, because he's very deliberate in what he's doing in our lives, what he wants us to do, and what season we may be in. And I didn't understand that. And so he took the time to kind of show me, to try to put me on the right path. But in my military career, in '99, I retrained. I become a staff sergeant, admin, and there was a position open at the numbered Air Force, at Fifth Air Force, in their executive services section. And they looked at my records, right? And they're like, "You have great records." I'm like, "But there's not admin." So they're like, "You can come work with us," right?
Yeah.
So I worked with a 3-star general, right? And I think you didn't say too many names, so I won't say their names, but well, I will say one name. So I was working with Chief Master Sergeant Gerald Murray. This was probably about a year and a half or so before he became Chief Master Sergeant Air Force.
Okay.
So I come
Nice.
there, lowest ranking person, no admin experience. And
Right.
my boss did not train me at all. His focus was primarily getting a step promotion. And so he gave me all of his work. And so I didn't do any of my upgrade training, didn't do anything. I was drowning in the position, to be
Yeah.
honest. And my supervisor, he got his step promotion. And man, I got a markdown on my EPRs, my first markdown, probably my only markdown in my entire career that I received. And I was like, if I stay here, my career is going to go down, right? Because I can't do the work that Chief Murray needed me to do to the level he needed. And I realized I was out of my element, and I shouldn't have been at that time brand new, coming off a flight line, and then the transition from flight line from maintenance to an office setting was already that's already a very traumatic experience
Yeah.
as and so I just asked if I could leave, right? I fired myself from the position. I was like, it's just a little bit too much for me. And so with my tail between my legs, they sent me downstairs to work in the legal office. And I was working with Senior Master Sergeant. Well, she was Master Sergeant at the time. She made Senior Master Sergeant, Belinda Hartwell. And man, she worked me hard, right? There was one day I told her I like no about something. I couldn't do something. And she's like, "Ham, don't you ever tell me no again." She was like, "From this point on, right? You will not tell." I mean, and she worked me to the bone. I didn't want to hear my name called anymore. I was like, just change my name to Alejandro or something. Like,
Yeah.
please, I don't want to hear. Like, and it drove me crazy how much I was doing there. And I didn't understand what she was doing until I was deployed I went to Saudi Arabia, and I'm there. I go there working on the night shift help desk. It's me and two A1Cs with no help desk experience. And on days, they're stacked, the master sergeant, a couple techs and staff. And I was like, man, we got like 4 days. I need y'all to get spun up. That's all we got, right? So I train them up and we're running. And we do well, so well that people waited until we got there at nights to say, "Hey, I'll just wait till night shift
Yeah.
because they're gonna take care of whatever it is. We're gonna take care of." We did. We cleaned up everything that was ever done. We did a great job. And there was one day when I sat there and somebody asked me for something crazy, and I answered their request, and I was like, "I see what she was doing." All this time, like I didn't know really, like all the things that she was doing was building up who I needed to be as an NCO. I didn't understand as an NCO that a good NCO doesn't need to know the answer. They need to know where to find it. And she
Right.
taught me that. This is where I learned the foundations of my own success in the military, which was leaving my unit better when I found it, help everybody. So when you
Right.
look at stripes, and I know we'll talk about stripes in a little bit, but
Yeah.
all the stripes and the rest of my career can be summed up into those two statements: leaving my office better than where I found it, and helping everybody. And I learned that from her. So I come back, and when I came back, even when I was with her before that, she put me in for everything. Right, my previous section put me in, so I go from like the lowest admin in the NAF, in the numbered Air Force building, to the top. All right, I'm
Right.
winning awards. Now I'm in magazines. Right, she was writing articles. She was doing all kind of stuff for me. All right, and so she worked me hard, but she put me in for everything. So that was kind of my focus moving forward. So it showed me about hard work and about investing in other people. And
Yeah.
she said, Hamp, I always knew that you would either be a chief or an officer, one of the two. And right, and sometimes when you come from, you're being fired from a position and being humiliated, right? Because there was some humbling moments, like in public, where there were some individuals in that office that made some public statements about me, and I'm in the room, and everybody in the numbered Air Force in the building looking at me, right? So it was a very humbling experience for me to come and say, hey, I'm gonna work somewhere different, and then for that person to see something in you that you don't see in yourself. So
Yeah.
that was the start for me as far as mentoring and investing in others. It started there. So every time I received a rank or a promotion or some position, even first sergeant, I'll call her or email her and say, this position, this rank is a direct reflection of what you invested in me. I'm doing that all for my entire career, even up to chief. Like, what you've done is a direct reflection of what you invested in me. So
Right.
then that's what kind of began that story for me going there. So I didn't know if you wanted to ask a question. I could pause here.
No, no,
All right,
no, that's awesome. That's good to have a mentor like
keep
that.
going.
Yeah, that's good.
So I go to Osan, and so from I leave in 2004. I go to Osan. In Osan, it was probably the most sexual temptation I've ever experienced in my life. Now my background was being a womanizer and pornography, all kind of stuff. And
Yeah.
man, it was crazy. I didn't think I was going to leave there without touching somebody. It was absolute. I've never it was in the church too, and I got out of there without doing anything crazy.
It's good.
And oh, it was hard because the hardest day was they had like a ball, and I was leaving, and one of the young ladies was like, "Hamp, are you sure you want to leave? You looking really good today." And I was like, "Yes, I want to leave, right? Because if I stay, I know like something's going to happen." But
Right.
at the end, when she left, it was an altar call because I was still preaching. I was preaching on base and off base at the time, and I'll come back to the off base story here in a second.
Yeah.
Uh, and so now I tell her, like, hey, I tell her the difference about her inner beauty and her outer beauty and what she needs to focus on. All right, she put her head down and she's like, yes, sir, I understand what you're saying. I was like, no, lift your head up. It's all good. Right. But the Lord wants he wants others to see your inward beauty and not just what's on the outside. Right.
Yeah.
If I have a sexual relationship with her, I can't have that conversation with her. Right. So
Right.
being trying to minister and living with integrity, sometimes you're going to be in some difficult situations. And in that, every time I would go to the Lord, like, Lord, I don't think I'm going to make it in this situation. Lord, I need your help. And I'm
Yeah.
praying to him. This is where we're going when you look at First Corinthians, right? Like Paul, right? I'm speaking to the Lord about my weaknesses so that his grace, right, is sufficient for us to help us. And so his power is made perfect in our weaknesses. So it helped me in that time. So now I'm going to Hickam at the time. So I have a follow on from South Korea to Hickam. And so I probably my most challenging supervisor, right? I mean, he treated me like I was his personal concierge. Like he's farming me out to other people around the building. I mean, to the bone. Like it was hard. And it
Yeah.
got to a point like, well, sir, for me, instead of arguing, because I knew he was the type of person that would destroy my career, right? If I step out of line, he would. And I said, can I have an opportunity to, maybe, just kind of get some a breath of experience, kind of change jobs a little bit, just as just a little bit of experience somewhere else. He's like, yeah, sure. I was like, okay, cool. So I talked to the functional manager and said, hey, this opportunity to work with the in the front office has come open. Now the 3-star general that was at the NAF is now the
Mm.
PACAF commander.
Gotcha.
So now I'm like, okay, cool. I know him. Like he knows my work ethic. He knew I'm a Christian, right? Everything. Because there was times when he asked me different scriptures, right? While he's going to coming to and from my office, he'll ask me, hey, what's the scripture for today? And I give him a word. I share the word
Yeah.
for the day. So they're like, so in the interview, they're like, you know what? We're about to bring up this master sergeant from Japan. And, he's going to work in the front office too. I was like, is it this person? And it's like, yes, it is. I was like, I know I can't be here. I said, I worked with him before. And I told him everything. Like he gave me all his work. I was like, I can't do that. He said, look, he was a chief. He's like, what I'll do is if you say no, I'm gonna hire you and have you work in protocol. And then I'm gonna task you out in here. So either you can just stay here and just do this job, or you can work in protocol and this job. And I was like, oh, Chief, why are you doing
Jeez.
this to me? I was like, Chief, why? I was like, okay, fine. Sure enough, he gives me all of his work. There's 4 tech sergeants in the build in that office and a staff sergeant. I was a tech sergeant at this time. By this time, I was never so angry in my life. Right? There was one tech sergeant that she didn't want to get promoted. Another one was kind of like the mother hen of the group. So she and the other 2 wasn't really doing much, but they were like at 19, 20 years, I knew they was gonna make rank. And I was like, there's no way I'm not making rank this year. I studied for it was my first time testing. I studied for a year. I'm going to make master this year. There's no way I'm doing all the work. I mean, we have like 30 additional duties and I got like 28 of them. I'm like, there's no way it could even happen. And I didn't understand at the time that they were bringing him up to they couldn't give him a step promotion, right? You're a master sergeant, but they wanted to give him a strat, a number 1 strat. So I didn't understand it at the time. But the chief of staff, the director of staff was like, no, I'll sign it. He's a colonel. He's like, no, 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 don't send it up to the boss. I'll sign it. And he was very adamant. And so I remember hearing that, but I didn't understand how it worked because I was a tech sergeant. I
Yeah.
didn't understand that he was preventing that master sergeant because he watched him, what he was doing to me every day. He
Yeah.
wasn't going to let them get a number 1 strat out of there and make rank because that's what they were doing. They were trying to give him an opportunity to make rank. So he signed it at his level and he didn't get a strat. So I did receive an opportunity I made master sergeant, but just before I was about to apply to first sergeant to be a first sergeant, then I got an assignment to Ramstein, which was my wife's like number 1 place she wanted to go to. And I was like, oh man, okay, we'll go to Ramstein, which
Yeah.
was really good to help give me some experience, a little bit of experience as being a senior NCO and then kind of transitioning there. So definitely had that opportunity to go to Ramstein. So now I go to Ramstein, and I don't know where we're at in time, but so I go to Ramstein, and normally if I'm serving, so now I'm in church because this is one of the times I'm in together with my wife, and we're in church, and so I end up we had at a church for a guy with the pastor that we knew when we were our next door neighbor when we first got married in Japan. So I was like, okay, we go to the church, and while we're there, I ended up becoming the pastor of the church. So after a while, I'm ordained. I become the pastor of the church, and what I learned when you're pastoring a church, when you're doing anything in ministry, one of the most important things to do is to honor God in your
Yeah.
ministry because you want to make sure that you're in right standing with God in every way because you want His blessing. You don't want to run things halfway and then or cut corners because I want God's blessing, full blessing, and to show Him that I'm a good steward of what you've given. But the problem with the church was that we were using our on-base credentials to do all of our banking. And I was like, we can't do that, right? We're off the base, right? So we should be doing things off the installation.
Yeah.
So this is in law school. So I go to law school downtown. The guy is laughing. He's like, if this is ever registered as a church, there is a God. I mean, he wasn't like chuckling. I mean, like it was the funniest thing he heard like all year. And I
Yeah.
was like, man, it took me like 2-3 months to get the paperwork. I had to get paperwork translated in German and running around different people getting stuff notarized. It took me 3 months. I come
Yeah.
back to get my paperwork. It was the most humbling experience for him, right? He was super quiet, extremely professional. And
Right.
it was my chance where I could have been like, you see what
Mhm.
I'm saying? Right. There is a God. And you sitting here, but I was very professional. I got the paperwork and we established the church as a registered business in Lonsdale. So all of our banking, now the negative part was that I had to convert all the money into euro and then have to convert things back. But I was like, hey, as long as we're honoring God, then we're good.
Yeah.
So pastoring the church, as I'm pastoring, then all the people that are paying tithes, all the tithe paying members are slowly PCSing. And I'm like, wait a minute, Lord, hold on. I see what's happening. no, 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 Lord. I was like, the Lord, the folks leaving. And
Yeah.
we had moved churches to this big church. We're paying like 3,000 euro, probably like $3,700 a month. And I'm like, all the people are leaving. We got like probably a kitty, like about maybe $25,000, $30,000. And I did some construction work, which I shouldn't have done. I should have left the money in there, right? Because
Yeah.
I was only going to be there a short period of time. But my heart was for the people. And so the money's dwindling down. We get down to 600 euro. And it's the church anniversary. The pastor comes back, right? The original pastor comes back. And I tell the church across the pulpit, we only have 600 euro on the account. But I'm telling you, this time next month, I'm going to be here telling you what God did for us. And that month they gave even less money, right? Because I don't brag to people, right?
Yeah.
But the whole time God was telling me that there was a person that was gone, a PCS. He's like, they're going to pay tithes and they're going to take care of you for the rest of the time you're here. I haven't heard from this person in over a year. 2 weeks later, that person contacts me, says, I've been gone for a year and a half. I've been saving my time for a year and a half. This is my church, my home church. This is my last church. I'm sending you a check. Send me the address. Sure enough, she sends me the address. And as long as I was there, I never had to worry about another thing.
What?
And it showed me about God's faithfulness, right? Because I was trying to honor God in what I was doing, right? And God honor work. And what I learned is that if we take care of God's business, He'll take care of your business. So now, from this point, I'll tell this, and then I know I'll stop. I don't know if you got a question, but so now, if you do got a question, I'll pause.
No, man, keep going.
Oh, from this point, I'm about to leave Germany. I'm like, what's next, right? I'm tired. It's this pastorate, right? You pastor for a while, you're tired. All that comes up is is South Korea. 4 South Koreas for a master sergeant. Never happens. I'm like, oh no, Lord, I can't. I'm going back to the States. I cannot go to South Korea. I'm like, Lord, I'm tired. God's like, Hamp, what if I need you in South Korea? I was like, I don't want to be without my family for a year, right? Because by this time, my daughter's about to go into high school. I was like, you don't want to go to there's people that do 3 years with their family in South Korea. That wasn't going to be me, right? My daughter wanted to go to Texas, and I was like, no. I was like, okay, Lord, right? I sign up. I go to, so I get South Korea. A week later, God says, go to the church off base. Remember, I told you about the off base church before He's like, go to this upper room Church of God in Christ. He says, go to the church, upper room Church of God in Christ, and support the man of God. That's all he says. Now, the pastor that I was with in Japan, I wanted to message him. I haven't talked to him in a long time. So I tell him what's going on. He says, I know that pastor, but I'll let you guys do the introductions.
Right.
So I get to the church. I don't even, right? He's a Baptist preacher in a Church of God in Christ service, right? Completely different church, right? And there's another family there. And he normally opens the doors of the church. I never joined the church, but I was there. Within 2 weeks, I had a key and I cleaned the church every week. I was doing videotaping, audio, whatever he needed. I preached, I did Sunday school, whatever he needed, I was there. And I understood it because I was a pastor myself, and I understood what a pastor needed. So I did all these things without him even asking. And I didn't understand until 6 months in, we're at a meeting, at some ball or some type of event. And he tells me that there was a huge church split and all the members from the church had left him there. And I was like, I see why you sent me now, Lord, because I understood what a pastor needed. And you're choosing me, right? As hard as it is, right? Sometimes God asks us to do hard things and sacrifice, right? A lot of times in Christ, I've been preaching about this lately, that we want comfort and we want this great comfort and this great peace, right? And instead, in Christ, it's going to be service and sacrifice. Right. So we want comfort and we want all things to go well, but God is sometimes He's calling us to do things that's a sacrifice, but that's going to be a blessing to someone else. And I was like, Lord, I saw it. And I was like, thank you, Lord, right? God sent me on the other side of the world. And it was hard. It was that second time in South Korea was harder, but it was my most productive year. That year I got promoted to senior master sergeant. I got I got the nod to go to First Sergeant Academy. I'd written like a ton of books. I mean, so it was a great year in different ways, but it was hard because I was without my family. But I understood that sometimes, right, God will sacrifice your comfort at times in order
Mhm.
for his will to be accomplished. So I definitely appreciated the opportunity to serve in that capacity and then go to my next base, right? So then now I'm a first sergeant. So now the tables are back where I'm not doing ministry now. It's like I wanted to do ministry, but the Lord was like, no, what I need you to do now is focus on being a first sergeant.
Yeah. Man, I bet that that first sergeant job's probably not a fun one.
It was the best 3 years of my military career and the hardest 3 years. I mean, by far. Plus, I'm introverted, and being an introvert, and in the military, from my perspective, it's almost like we want everyone to be extroverted. Like it's like
Right.
an extrovert military. So I get drained very quickly. If I'm like, even now when I'm preaching, I do a sermon, preach, I need to sit down. Even after this podcast, I need to sit down somewhere. Right. I get drained really fast. So I was like,
Yeah.
okay, I really want to do it. I feel like this was God's will. How do I get this done? And it was the first time in my military career that I learned how to mix my Christianity and my military experience, because I couldn't figure out, because throughout the years it felt like it was oil and water, and I was like,
Mhm.
I can't mix the two. How do I mix these? And it was compassion by me just displaying an overabundance of a compassion. I already had the service because I was mentoring, right? And in my mentoring, I'll get, well, let's see, I'm a little ahead, so I'll talk about this, and I'll double back to how I got to stripes, because
Yeah.
writing was part of it. So it was really hard, but I learned how to serve people. And oftentimes, as a first sergeant, you will face people either their worst time of the year, the worst time in their career, or the worst time in their life. And that's when they need some grace. And we were extremely gracious, but we're extremely like, if you're on the wrong side of the tracks, you're going to get hammered. And the ADC always said, the Area Defense Council, like, look, what squad are you in? Oh, they don't play around. They'll take care of you, right? They'll be there for you, but you on the other side, you're going to get the hammer. And there were great times when I had an opportunity to exercise compassion toward others. There was a gentleman in particular that we had talked to him during his time while he was there. He had a girlfriend, and he just was always over the top with the relationship. And so they brought him to my office. I tried to talk to him. He wanted to marry her, and so now she leaves before he does. He's in Ramstein. She's in Ramstein. He's here. He graduates, supposed to be in Texas. Next thing you know, I get a call, right, that he's in Germany, and he held her by knife point for like almost 2 days. And so during the time, the family's calling him, please don't do this, over Facebook, right? She's communicating with her supervisors, and they got him. She got him to say, hey, can you take me? I'm feeling sick. Can you take me to the medical clinic? At the medical clinic, right? They take her there, they pull her back, and now he sees the security forces members. He realizes that if you've been to Ramstein, he jumps out the second story window, right? And he runs to the gate, but they wind up apprehending him. So
Yeah.
now he's there and they're figuring out what to do. I'm like, where is he at right now? Like, well, we put him in a cool down room. What? He needs to be apprehended. He needs to be like in pretrial confinement right now, right? He
Yeah.
needs to be fined to go get him, right? So now it takes us like several months to bring him back to the States, right? We're talking through MASCOM level stuff. This is
Yeah.
MASCOM level stuff. But I understand, like, as a first sergeant, making sure my commander, I always want to protect my commander, right? Because commanders get hired and fired based
Mhm.
on what they're doing. At this time, he made Colonel two below. So we had what's called Operation Protect Eagle. I'm like, you're not losing your promotion because of something I'm doing, right? Or not doing. We had the most discipline in the wing. But I investigated everything because I'm like, there's going to be no stone that's not turned. So, but when he gets back to the States, we treated him with grace, right? When he got back, we didn't have an opportunity to get him because we had to reprocess him with food and different things like that. So,
Yeah.
the people took him to Whataburger. Every time he came on base, hey man, come on, bring him to my office. And I went out there once a week, right, to check on him, make sure he was good. The boss, it's mandatory for him to go every 30 days, but I checked on him every week, and I'm kind of calling. I gave him an opportunity to call out his family anytime he wanted. But when he first got there, his parents called me. And they talk about how, like, we were on the phone with him. I don't know how he could do this. Is there any way we could see him? I'm like, well, visiting hours are at such and such times. Like, we working right now. All we can do, we can see him at this time. right? And as a first sergeant, you can easily say, you know what, I don't have time, right? Or these are hours, sorry, I can't help you, right?
Yeah.
But this is where passion comes in, right? You're hearing the family. I said, you know what, let me call to the jail and let me see what we can do. All right, there's a liaison that works with the jail, that works with the military. So I call, like, listen, what's going on? Is there any way that we can kind of schedule some time in outside of the hours, right? And it's like, yeah, sure. Yes, come on down, right? So we come down and get that squared away. Then his pay gets turned off, right? Because when you're in pretrial confinement, you're not convicted. So I'm like, his pay should still be on. So I'm working with AFPC to kind of get those things done, working hard, right? And as a first sergeant, it's awesome because, normally you couldn't get a hold of anybody. But then
Right.
I'm like, I called AFPC and they like, hey, what's your social? As soon as I give my social, like, who you need to talk to? I'm like, I need to talk to this person. And you get the phone call, right? They pick up the phone, right? For a first sergeant. I'm like, man, that was awesome, right? I call as a chief, I can't get no help. But a first sergeant call, like, you get a desk, they answer the phone, we get them squared away. And it was so heartbreaking because there was a point when he said, I'm gonna go to jail, right? We're on a visit and we're like, I'm gonna go to jail for a long time, aren't I? And I was like, I don't know, but just know that, we're gonna make sure you're taken care of and that we're trying to square you away, right? You always treat people with the big A, no matter what they're doing, the big A, right? No matter what people are going through, always treat them with kindness and respect. And so it gave me an opportunity. There was many more stories than that,
Yeah.
but an opportunity to be able to serve someone else. And that's where I really, really found like, this is how I can serve as a Christian. And this is because I just couldn't figure it out, right? But it was like, this is how I was like, thank you, Lord, showing me how I can serve other people. And so it began as a book, right? I had a couple of books at the time, but when my boss was leaving, he was, the commanders write a 2-page letter for the next, or at least 2 pages, right? Or for the next commander. And I was
Right.
like, man, yeah, I should do that for first sergeants. Like, so then I wrote a book, the 20 Essentials for the Air Force First Sergeant, super short book. Man, that thing sells like hotcakes even to this day. And so it's the only one that's out there on Amazon, right? When you type in, you're looking for a book, you're like first sergeant, like Army stuff. Like, so the book comes up because I wanted to give back. I give away books. You can go to my website right now and download all my books for free.
Yeah.
But it gave me a way to be able to share my love for mentoring and taking care of others. But I didn't realize that was also a means to, it was like my therapy because I was experiencing a lot of loneliness and some struggles in my relationship, my marriage, and I'm not going out to step out. So I'm writing books. So I'd be writing one book after another book after another book after another book. I didn't realize that till later on. That's what I was doing. So it was definitely therapy for me to be able to take care of other people. So it was awesome. But I can keep going though. I can keep going. I can keep telling stories. So I'll stop.
Absolutely. Well, we're almost at the 2 hour mark. We're gonna start getting it wrapped up pretty soon.
Really?
Yeah, yeah. It's I mean, I could listen to the stories all the time. And I'm sure people who are listening love to hear the stories.
Sure.
Real quick, in about, I don't know, 5 minutes,
Hey.
uh, as a first sergeant, what was that the craziest thing that you dealt with, or what was the craziest thing as a first sergeant?
No, the crazy one of the crazier stories. There was a time when we had like a ton of discipline, and we are just whumping on people right and left, right and left, right and left. And well, I'll tell two quick ones. And but there's this one guy that he was having some problems. I heard that he was running a meth lab in his house. I told OSI about it, but he was acting up so badly. I was like, you know what? Let's just go on a house visit, right? Because
Mhm.
there's an opportunity for us. I just want to see if he got a meth lab. So my additional duty first sergeant, and we go through the whole house, right? We walking through the house as we talking to him and stuff. No lab, but he has a trailer. He was literally a real life Walter White.
Oh
And
man.
it's just like Breaking Bad. But when he leaves, right, the OSI catches up with him. And I'm like, please don't bring him back here, right? Because he had already PCS, he already left the base. And I was like, technically, he's still assigned to us. Please don't bring him back. And
Yeah.
they let him go on. I was like, okay, cool, cool. But that was probably one of the crazier stories. One of the ones where I violated, right? I violated some AFIs. There was a time when we had a lot of suicidal ideations. And in the suicide ideations, I'm like, I don't want to lose an airman on our watch. I was like,
Yeah.
so there were things where I was able to write a health and safety plan and I coordinated that with legal office and with mental health. And so we actually restricted their liberties. And so I didn't know if they was going to sign it or not, but I told my boss about it. He's like, well, let's see what they're going to say. They signed off on it. But in that time, right, because they couldn't go off base, we were monitoring their medications. Some of them were in class, so we're kind of making sure that they're being watched and protected. But they're all going to this one young lady who was older. She was on casual status, and she was getting real tired. And she's like, Sergeant Lee, I can't take a leave, right? And so she had been there for almost a year, and she was like, I needed a break. I was like, you know what? Hold on. Let me make a phone call. So I made a phone call to the dorm manager. Hey, you got some dorms available to her? Yeah, sure. Cool. We'll put them in the permanent party dorms. Then next, I sent her. She had casual status, right? I called the hospital. Nobody was there. I was like, called the first sergeant. Hey, do you got a position over there for her? Yeah, sure. Got a position over there. Okay, cool. I call over to the MTLs and tell them like, look, this is what I did. She's going to report starting tomorrow. She's moving over here. This is what she got going on. And I get everything done. I hang up the phone. I'm like, oh man, I didn't talk to the commander. I just violated like 2 major ATCIs. I put a trained technical school trainee in with the permanent party, changed their whole situation. I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't talk to the boss, right? My zeal for taking care of airmen kicked in. Yeah. And so I talked to my boss. He put his head down. He's like, I talked to the group, right? As soon as they talked to the group, went straight to the colonel, right to the wing commander.
Yeah.
Wing commander was like, well, we know Hamp didn't do this intentionally, right? We know Hamp wasn't trying to do anything bad. And she was like, how much time you need? I was like, 2 weeks. Got it. 2 weeks. She was like, I will take the hit. I'll talk to 2nd Air Force, let them know what we're doing. It's all good. But in 2 weeks, she needs to be back where she's supposed to be. Yes, ma'am. Right. So we made sure that she was taken care of. And I think what really went over for us was that our continual path of excellence and knowing that like, hey, I'm not trying to do this intentionally. I'm trying to take care of an airman. And sometimes when we're serving others, it comes a point not where I'm trying to violate. I wasn't trying to violate an order. I was trying to take care of an airman. And so that was my heart was. But that was but it was a great time. And it was a great opportunity for me from that point. That's where kind of Stripes was written. I was thinking about Stripes at the time. I didn't have it completely written out, but I was like, I need to, just as I wrote a book for first sergeants, I need a book for bullet riding because my path for bullet riding has started in 2007.
All right. So Stripes, and I know I've mentioned it and you've mentioned it a few times, it really was a great book. It actually helped me write EPRs and some awards packages. EPRs are enlisted performance reports, but helped me write some of those awards packages. And I definitely handed it down. And if I didn't have it on me, I'd be like, dude, check this out. And I would show people the website, how to get it. Or if I had it downloaded, I would just shoot it over in the shared drive. Because I mean, it was just full of knowledge, full of tips and tricks on how to write those bullets. But how did that start? Because I know you said you were thinking about it around that time as the first sergeant. But it started in 2007. So I'll say this real quick. So 2007, I went to. So this is when I get my line number for master sergeant. Gotcha.
They had just come out on base. They had the first, I think I was in the first NCO PES, right? So they never had it. So it was like the first one. And this was definitely going to be the first senior NCO PES, right? So the professional enhancement seminar. I'm thinking like, I'm in the top 3. It's like a new club. I'm going to get some information. I'm ready. And they gave the same information, the same briefers 6 months prior. Man, I was hot and I felt cheated and I was mad. And I said, you know what? If I ever get a chance to be a chief, I'm teaching bullet riding. I don't know. If I ever get I want to hear from chiefs, right? That's teaching bullet riding. And from that point, that's where it started. So then I just took a set of slides off the web and started teaching bullet riding. And it was bad in the beginning. I'm gonna lie. It was bad because I wouldn't own it. But I did it because I wanted to give something back to other fellow airmen that may not have a lot of good supervisors, and then being able to be a help. If I'm gonna be here, then I want to make a difference in others in the lives of others. So that's where it kind of started. So one base to the next, and once I started to own it myself, that's when the change came. So now, as a first sergeant, I was teaching bullet writing, not as often, but I did a few. I was starting to tweak it a little bit, and I was like, I got to write this book. So now that's when I get to my next base. So before I get to Maxwell, I go to Biloxi. So I'm
Okay.
at what
Keesler.
base? Keesler. So I'm at Keesler. I'm thinking like, what? So I get to Keesler. My first week there, I see a guy. I'm at the promotion ceremony. I see a guy that was that at Hickam with me back in '07 time frame, right around the time
Right.
frame. Runs up to me, he grabs my stripe, grabs me by a stripe, and shakes my sleeve and says, "How did you make this rank so fast?" Because when
Yeah.
I was a tech sergeant with a line number. He was a staff sergeant. Several years later, right? This is almost 7, 8 years later. He's a tech sergeant. I'm a senior master sergeant, hot for chief, right? So I mean, I have a #1 strat, Air Force level award. I'm like, there's no way I'm not making chief this year. I'm studying all year. And I was like, he was like, I got one chance left to test. No, he said, I had two more chances left. I need some help. Right. I said,
Right.
let's sit down. So now, as I'm talking to him, I'm like, he's my test case because I'm about to write this book. I'm
Hmm.
going to go through the entire route. So I literally took him from step one all the way to the end to work through as this is his life, right? This is his real life. I'm
Yeah.
working through how to write stripes and to finish it off. And lo and behold, I leave. He has one EPR we can't is already being written, but he winds up making master his last time testing. In November of 22 was his
Hmm.
retirement ceremony. He retired as a senior master sergeant. And he wound up getting another stripe and wound up winning the Air Force level Side Young Award. You can go back a little while back. He beat one of my airmen. And when she beat him, he beat her at the MASCOM level. And I told her like he's the original. I was like, he was the test case. I was like, I don't know if you was gonna beat him. I was like, you got a great package. She wound up making chief and retired. But
Yeah.
man, but so now I'm at Maxwell, and so I know you wanted to pick up from there, and that's kind of where we meet.
Yeah, 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 absolutely. That's an awesome story, and that's kind of what we needed. People need to do because there's been so many times. It's like I know growing up in my career, I would write the EPR, send it to my supervisor, and then I would never see it again until it was time to sign it. And it was like, okay, well, you know, am I writing well? Are these good bullets? And they weren't. They were completely 100%, 180 degrees the opposite way, but nobody really taught you how to write it. And then as you get a little older, guys are like, "Well, I just write really well, so just give it to me." And then when it's time for you to write it, and people are dependent on you to write it and write it alone, it's
Yeah,
like, well, it's been handed down. I mean, it's been handed to me my entire career, and it's like I will figure it out, you know.
yeah,
Um, so the book that's pretty awesome. That dude, you helped him get master, and then he beat out your troop as the original. So that's
yeah.
that's pretty funny. Um, but yeah,
Yeah.
so Maxwell, what's up?
Oh no, no, go ahead, go ahead.
Oh yeah, so I was gonna say, so Maxwell, this is where I met you at, as you said, and I remember I went up to Maxwell to do something. I was there for the day, um, and I don't remember this guy's rank, but I grabbed him. I was like, "Hey man," I was like, "I'm not from here. I'm out at Fort Benning, but I'm up here for the day. Who's like the top three? Who's the head dude or person for the top three?" Um, and he's like, I don't know. He's like, but and I kind of explained, I'm like, dude, I'm looking for some mentorship. I'm looking to do this. He's like, I don't know, but I know this guy, Hamp Lee, he's a chief. He works over I forgot you're the group, I think.
Yeah, with chief.
Um and he works over there. Here's his card, give his secretary a call and you guys schedule an appointment. I was like, yeah, yeah, okay, cool. I take it. And I'm like, all right. And I Google it. I'm like, where is this place? And I drive right over and I just go right to your office. I'm like, look, I'm leaving in a few hours and I know how this works. I didn't know you at the time, but I knew, you call somebody like, hey, I'd like to do this. And, you might not get them. You may, I don't know. So I was just like, well, I'm just going to go and sit and wait. So I go there and you were out of the office. It was probably lunchtime. But I sat there and waited for you to get back. And then, yeah, man, it was, and you thankfully took me in to your office and actually sat down and listened. And that's where our friendship began. So, and you helped me out along the way. like, "Hey, man, send me all your EPRs, send me this," and then, and we've kept in touch since then. But yeah, man. So how was that one? How was the moving over to that group and so Stripes is in full effect, really, right?
Yeah, Stripes is full effect. So with the Stripes, I've taught that class all around the world. Like literally, I mean, one of the last classes was in Australia. There was a group of there was a little element in Australia, and they asked me if I could teach and help them. And she wound up making CMAS art. And so we kind of looked at her EPR, kind of helped her make CMAS art. And there was times I taught for maybe a few years when I was at Maxwell at Squadron Officer School. And there was a captain that walked up to me and said, "I saw this book in Afghanistan, and I never thought I'd meet the author." Like, dude, like man, it seems like it's cool, right? And I never thought about this. I didn't think that the book would become what it was. Like, it's been in Japan and all these different places, and helped a lot of people write bullets. And I was just trying to be a help, and it's hard because, like you were saying, like people just say figure it out. And as when I was a supervisor, and I didn't want to let my airmen down, and I was like, man, I got to write better. I don't want it to be. I don't want my airmen to be not to be recognized because I couldn't write well. And that's
Yeah.
a lot of times what it boiled down to. And during that time, I was going through a really hard time
Mhm.
during that season. When I met you, I was going through it. Like my father passed away, my wife wanted a divorce 60 days later, and the only thing that kept me really during that time was mentoring, right, and
Yeah.
writing books. Because that's why my boss hired me. He's like, I heard you can write well. I need to win, right? He was a as a colonel, he was as a man's man. He's very competitive. I
Yeah.
want to win. That's why you are here. I said, sir, give me 1 quarter and we gonna win. And while I was in, we was winning everything. I mean, we was crushing everybody, right? So and
Yeah.
he loved it. Like that's what he wanted. He's like, I got everything else, but I want to win. And I was like, sir, I got you. So that's why I was there. So it helped me. It was therapeutic. Again, it helped me serving others. Always, it fills you back up. It filled my cup during the
Yeah.
time I needed it the most. I mean, it was a real tough time. So for me, as a chief, I felt like every airman is my airman. So I always have time, especially when it came to mentoring. Because when I became a chief, it's like you're in the fourth quarter of your career. Kobe Bryant, he's 5 minutes left. You got the ball. You're like, how am I going to finish? I want to finish well. So you think about that. Like, how do I want to finish? I wanted to finish mentoring. I wasn't really interested in being a command chief and do those different things. I told you about being an introvert, right? I wanted to
Yeah.
spend my time serving. So wherever I was, like my job was pace. Like I was tracking pace, right? Because I was like, I want to do what that person's doing. And I wound up having an opportunity after that job to go to pace. And now I'm at the program manager job, Air Force Hamp One. This is what I want to spend my time doing, investing back into the lives of airmen and to make things better for them. So that's leaving my Air Force better than what I found it. And then helping everybody. That's what it came down to. So it was
Kind of
definitely
sounds. Sorry. Go ahead.
no, go ahead, go ahead.
I'll say it kind of sounded like what you just said, leaving the Air Force better than when you got it, man. Sound like reflection back, you know, to your earlier career. Like, hey, I want to leave my area better than what I got it. So that's a statement.
It kept me my
It's a
whole career.
yeah, a character statement there. That's
Yeah, it
awesome.
kept me my whole career because when you're doing that, it keeps you humble, right? Because sometimes you can be very competitive when you're looking at your peers, but whenever you have that eyesight to just improve things, they always kept me humble, always kept me in balance, and it helped me along the way. And then plus, as I'm looking to retire in several months, then I can retire. So you know what, my head held up high. That I did my very best to serve my country. This is how I served, and I tried to help as best I could. And so, whenever I leave the Air Force, right? You're not going. My name's not going to be on any walls, or so they're not going to remember some of my programs. Even with the Air Force Hamp One, they won't remember any of that stuff. But people remember what I may have done for them in their lives.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing, man. Is when you touch somebody personally, right? When you're there to help somebody out, that's what leaves that lasting memory.
Yeah,
Because I've left the military. I retired almost a year ago. Um, people, the machine's going to keep moving, right?
yeah, yeah,
And people are going to forget you. Uh, no matter how good of work, how great of a worker you were and all the things you did. But it's those interpersonal, you know, interactions that you've had with people. That's what's lasting, and that's the good stuff.
Yeah,
So
investing in others, and that's what it's all about. Jack, I'm gonna say this. You may cut it out, but you are the only person of my entire career that I couldn't see get promoted, and it's bothered me. I'm not gonna lie. I don't know. It is always bothered me. It was you and someone else at one point. It was a subordinate I had that she had a challenge. I helped her. She had made chief, but man, I couldn't. I couldn't like. It's always like God has a purpose and a plan. It's beyond me. But I tell you, man, that was always like. I was like, I want to make sure I want to see you cross the line, and I wanted to see that line crossed and to get there. But it's always been on me about that. So
yeah, no, it's I look and I tell a story of like how it happened. You know, getting to where I was, and I'm like, I tell that story, and it's like, oh man, that's sucks. That happened to you, but I'm like, okay, well, what if I would have studied harder for staff? You know, when I made staff, or what if I would have studied harder for tech? So it's not that one instance. You know what I mean?
yeah,
It's stuff that that was previous to that. So, I mean, we tried. I mean, we tried everything.
yeah,
There's some other things, and we could talk offline that I found. I don't even know if I told you, but there's some other stuff that went down with that um, that I found out. Just it wasn't helping my situation.
yeah.
My supervisor, but that's neither here nor there.
Yeah.
Um,
No, I think it's for me, it was just I don't know, my competitive nature wanting to, help everyone. There's gentlemen I've heard, career for managers say, you'll never get promoted out of this job. And we're like, oh, now he's a chief, right? They used a master sergeant back then. Now he's chief, but it's not always about like rank and things like that. It's being able to serve honorably and being able to finish well. And if you say, hey, I've done all I can do, and this is what I've given my country, thank you for your service. And like you said, like the machine continues moving, and so I've been preparing for my transition, just trying to do the best I could. You've left the military better than when you found it. I'm trying to leave the military better than when I found it, because the machine continues. And so the next generation of individuals, what can I give them, right? So that they can continue on. And I think what happens with that is that baseline of Christianity, of Christian service, right? When you want to be first, you're going to be the servant of all. When you want to be the greatest, right? You're going to be the least. So I'm going to continue to serve, and having that mindset and putting that out, because the military is not always based on that. Even though sometimes people say it in certain places, it's based on rank and authority and position. We get that, right? In the professional arms, I got it. But then if I know that even though I'm at this rank, I can still take my time to serve. Even you, like I didn't know you, right, when you came to my office, but I'm gonna stop and I'm gonna take the time to speak with you, and we're gonna go over your EPRs. We're gonna do all those things. Why? Because I'm here to serve. So
right,
some people, sometimes we forget that, especially as Christians, we forget that it's not always about that I'm the top dog or I'm the whatever in whatever position. No, I have this position to be able to lend to give to others, because I said back in 2007 that if I'm ever a chief, I'm gonna be teaching bullet writing, which I was. But now we have opportunity again, the chief bullet to give, for God to bring that to fruition, to allow me to have an opportunity to teach bullet writing. Then it's an obligation, but I don't feel like it was a chore, right? I,
right,
I get the opportunity to serve you. I got the opportunity to serve airmen all around the world and to help them to be recognized for the great things they were already doing, right? And to be able to put it on paper very clearly, so that there are people that were deserving of awards. You're deserving of things that you're deserving. You earned them. Just be recognized for them. So I just wanted to help people recognize why, because in my career, I didn't always get recognized. And so I had some supervisors here or there that went out of their way to make sure I was recognized. But now I was like, here's a book that if you don't have a supervisor that you can read, to be your digital supervisor to help you. Some people call me and hey, if you want to talk, somebody call me right now. We can have a conversation
yeah,
about book writing and helping you in your career, because I'm still a chief, even when I'm out, right? As long as I
right,
still going on. But I think that's the essence of Christian service, is finding, like for me, what kept me is finding the niche, finding the purpose. Like if I'm here, and sometimes we have jobs and we sign up to serve, we're in the professional arms. I salute smartly. You give me a job, I salute smartly and do it. But where I have an opportunity to reach in my passion, that was my passion. And so now God gave me the opportunity for almost half of my career to be invested in something that I was passionate about, to help airmen and to be a blessing, especially during my hardest of times, to be able to invest in airmen. That was a blessing for me. It's almost like, I want to say thank you for giving me the opportunity to serve. And it was a huge honor to be able to
Right.
help others and to serve. And hopefully, prayerfully, right? You're retired. I'm gonna be soon retired. That the people's lives that we touch, they'll see, right? Just as it says in John 13:35, they'll know that you're my disciples by your love one for another. And I learned that from my first sergeant duty that I can serve people through love and show them my actions of love, whether somebody was in trouble or not, to give them, right, my time, right, because time is precious. You can't, there's no refunds, there's no exchanges of time, to serve others through love and to
Yeah.
show them what Christian love looks like.
Man, I like it. I like it. Yeah, definitely, man. It's just helping people out. That's huge. And giving your time, like you said, man, because time is precious. And there's that time that I've been around those people who do that. It's like, well, I got to go, man. Yeah, I got this to do. But you get those people who actually care
Mm.
and say, hey, yeah, I was going to go do this, but let me take some time. We'll talk through this and we'll figure it out. That's always good to have that. So, man, but no, I do appreciate you taking that time and not kicking me out and be like, dude, what are you doing in my office? Like, who is this guy?
Yeah, no, here to serve. So I mean, I'm glad. I'm glad for the connection and glad for, because it always about, everything is about exposure and experience. And so I hadn't been in your world, right? I haven't been around, in the training environment. I haven't been in Fort Benning, so I hadn't been there before. So having an opportunity to see what you're doing and see what other airmen are doing, it was awesome. It was an awesome experience.
That's right, because I invited you guys down.
Hmm.
You guys spent the day doing the
Yep, yep.
airborne school stuff, and it was pretty cool. That was pretty awesome. I forgot about that.
Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah.
So again, about experience and exposure. So then I understood it also in my position, you give an opportunity. How can I give more opportunities to the airmen around me? And so some of those opportunities ended up for promotion consideration, some of them not. So then how can I use my service, no matter where I am, to provide greater opportunities for the airmen that are around me? And so that's what I learned through stripes and sometimes being in these situations where maybe I wasn't getting something, instead of being bitter, right? We can get better. And so then we can do better. There's another chief that says better has no finish line. And I'm like, man, that's awesome. Right. So
Yeah.
he's still active. And it's like, that's awesome. So then how can I do something that's better instead of being bitter? I can be mad and I can spend this whole time talking about what somebody didn't do in this podcast, right? But
Yeah.
instead, no, how can I do something where I can leave a better mark that maybe I didn't receive that, but then I have an opportunity to do that for someone else. And all of us have the power to do that. We all have the power and the ability where we are and what we're doing, no matter where we're in the military at, or even outside the military, to make a positive impact in the lives of those that are around us. So then while we are Christians, we have an even greater impact, because then we can impact them with love and also with the love of God, right? So however that may be, to do that. So we have these awesome opportunities to do that, but sometimes we don't always see that in the military. So hopefully through this, then we can have one more little seed planted or one that watered, that God will bring the increase through.
Oh man. Hopefully. Yeah. Definitely. Well, we're getting close to pretty much time to wrap up, and one of the things that we really haven't touched on is that I mentioned is that you started your own publishing company, and that was to help publish your own work.
Yeah, and it was, and it was partly for that, and then partly I was scared, right? Because I feared rejection. So
Yeah.
it was easier for me just to create my own publishing company because I can write wherever I want to write, and I don't have to worry about rejection. So it was a
Right.
little bit of that, but what it did teach me was it taught me how to my writing voice, because I have a specific, everyone has a specific style and you have
Mhm.
to go through the process. And so it taught me how to gain my own writing voice. I like to use the fewest words possible to get my point across. And then the system. And then even in writing a book, as I create the system, I wrote a free guide and I've helped a couple of people, maybe 2 or 3 people write books of their own. So there's one gentleman, I think he's only like third, fourth book already. I mean, he's like really pushing on. So then to help others to get their stories out, because all of us have a story and that story needs to be told. And some people, I believe it needs to be told because someone, either your children, right? Some of us don't have opportunity with our parents to learn their story. Like my father passed away. I can't get his entire story. So then we have an
Yeah.
opportunity to put into words some of the things that we've experienced that our children may learn and others may be able to also learn and grow from as well. So I create the company, and then now I'm in a system where I'm writing things on my own. Maybe I will go to a traditional publisher at one point, but I enjoy it. I enjoy the freedom to be able to write as I like, as few words or as many words as I would like to do, and I can publish it just like that. So, and then it gives me opportunity to share with others that publishing, because there are other people that have a heart to write as well. So then it's
Yeah.
like, hey, I know how to do that, and I can help walk you through it. I won't even charge anything if you like.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm wondering, and you may be able to answer this, but if like book writing is like, or book publishing is kind of like music, the music industry, and all that stuff, where it's like, well, we kind of like this, but now you need to shave your hair, and you're wearing these clothes, but you need to wear this, and then we'll think about maybe recording you.
Mhm.
Is that kind of what like the book industry is like?
A little bit, a little bit. They're looking for certain genres, or then you need to have a certain size following. And if you don't have that size following, it may be difficult to get in the door. You have opportunities where they say, well, okay, we need you to write 100,000 words. So you'll see some books and they have like all these extra stories, and you're like, why are you telling these stories? Well, they're trying to hit their number. So I
Yeah.
would, instead, my book may be 7,000 words. That's all that's needed to get the point across. So now I got to write another, well, maybe 40,000, right? Book maybe 40,
Right.
50 words. But now I got to write another 50,000 just to be able to meet the publisher's a goal. So now I'm putting a lot of filler. So
Right.
there are those kind of nuances. So I don't really want to write like that. I want to be able to just write what's necessary and move on. And so what's specific to what I want to say.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense, man. Any huge authors come across you yet? Any Stephen
For
Kings?
no, 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 not yet, not yet. I would like to. Like, there's some. I think because of my military background, I haven't brought on anyone to publish for them because there are rules, because I outrank most of the people that I would help. And so I was waiting until I'm retired, and then I'll probably engage some other authors if they're interested, if they don't have a book published already. But it's been almost like, quote unquote, like a hobby to me a little bit. I mean, I use the books all the time, but I haven't been actively marketing the books real hard. So it's kind of like, oh, like I have one sale this month so far. I looked online, like, oh, okay, there's a book that sold, and I'm not really concerned what sells, what doesn't, and if there's money, there's money at the bank. Okay, cool. Running on. I would like to at some point, but not of yet. I've been involved in pastoring, and there's been so many other things going on in my life that's kind of taken the focus away from just on the publishing itself.
Yeah. Man, that's awesome. You got such a great story. Uh, from growing up in South Central, and
Yeah.
you're making it up to the highest rank,
Uh,
uh, as a active duty enlisted man. And then here, man, you wrote 22 books. You've helped numerous people, you know, um, and you're still doing it. We didn't really touch on your ministry.
and we already
You
went
know,
at 2 hours. Yeah, I came in the military with $20, a CD player, and a bag of clothes, man. And look at what God did. I mean, it's all God. It's just, yeah, it's been amazing. It's been an amazing journey. I'm thankful for what God has done, and He's not done yet. He's not, all of our stories. Sometimes we're in the seasons of our lives, and we think like the story ends there. But no one's story, no matter how difficult a season may be, seasons change, and your story, where it is today, will not stay the same. There is a story being written for eternity. That story
yeah,
doesn't change, but where we are sometimes, and sometimes we find ourselves in some difficult spots. But knowing that we serve a God with no limits, and because of that, I just be faithful and follow Him. He'll lead me all the way to Him. And sometimes it's through some valleys, and
yeah.
sometimes it's on mountaintops. But the one constant is God, and He's been faithful. He's been good, and He's been faithful to us all these years. So I'm definitely
Amen
thankful
to that.
and looking
Yeah.
forward. definitely looking forward to where God will lead us in the future. So definitely, definitely uncharted territory. There'll be another podcast for that one. That is self ministry, but
Yeah.
God's been good.
Well, I'll tell you, man, I spent many a nights praying when I was on my way out. Um I think even while doing the skill bridge, I was doing a lot of praying like, yeah, God, it's your will, not mine. You
Mm,
know, if that means me working at, you know, Home Depot and in the middle of Iowa, you know, that's where you want me. Let's go.
mm.
And so, you know, you know, like you said, he has a plan, man. He doesn't change. He knows where you need to go. He knows what you want to do. And if you just put your faith in him and God, you know, it'll work out. So
It'll be an amazing, wild story, right? When you talk about living by faith, right? Because we want to live by comfort and we want convenience. That's what it was, the two C's, comfort and convenience. And a lot of us want comfort and convenience, and that doesn't always fit with what God's desire is. Our desire for our lives, a lot of times we want God to help us to improve the life that we've envisioned for ourselves. And God's like, as Ephesians 2:10 says, I've already had preordained works for you to do. And
mm,
I need you to accept. I talked about in my message today is called the invitation, accepting the invitation that he wrote based on what he wrote for you, based on as is written, not the way you want it written.
yeah, yeah,
Accepting that and what he wants for your life. But no, I'm appreciative for us. Thank you so much for the opportunity, just to be
yeah,
able to share. There's so much more. I think about 30 years and plus I'm 50 years old. So it's a half a century of living and how God has kind of led me to this point. I'm so thankful for where we are. I'm excited for the future. We're definitely walking in uncharted territory. I'm, as a pastor, teacher, and an introvert, right, walking into as a gift, a spiritual gift, an apostle, and we're doing a lot of evangelism now. That's definitely not my background, but no matter where God calls you, He's going to always equip you. So sometimes we feel fearful to step out in places that God's calling us to, but God will be with you and He'll help you all along the way.
yeah. You will absolutely, man, 100%. So before we take off, where can people find spiritual combat? Where can they find your books? Like, how can they reach out to you?
Oh, so currently all my books are on commission publishing. So if you go to commissionpublishing.com,
Mhm.
you can download. Currently, you can download all the books for free, right? So I don't charge anything right now. There may be a point where I'll adjust that, and we'll only have we will have maybe sample books, but right now you can download them all for free. Support the ministry if you'd like. Right now, I'm rebuilding my site for spiritual combatants. It's out there. I have probably maybe 400 articles from going back to 2000, but we're doing a shift in the ministry. So I'm trying to rebuild the website. So you can go out there and see that. But you go to like Facebook and go to spiritual combatants. We have a page, spiritual combatants hyphen Village Hills Fellowship, where we do all of our ministry. So that where we have right now we're running PB&J days. There was a point where I did a challenge. I won a $20 gift card and from a pastor's lunch, and I wanted to see how many PB&J sandwiches I could make. I made 84 sandwiches from Walmart, and man, since then we've been running. So every 2 weeks we'll go out downtown, and so we give out close to almost 250 sandwiches and water every couple weeks. And so we just went this past Saturday, and there was a huge need for clothing. So we're down there, prayer, water, and sandwiches. And so there's a lot of needs there, and we're really using it as an evangelistic opportunity. Not just we're giving food. We call it spreading the love of God with a sandwich. The sandwich is the hello. And it gives us the opportunity just to enter and walk along someone for a short period to be able to share Christ with them and talk about the Lord, just pray with them. There's a lot of needs out there, a lot of families, a lot of people are hurting, and it gives us the opportunity to walk alongside of the most vulnerable in our community.
Man, that's awesome. That's good stuff there, man. I like that. Well, perfect. Well, hey, brother, I appreciate you coming on tonight, and taking time out of your day,
No, thank you.
out
I
of your
appreciate it.
evening.
Because it's late. That's right. It's later for you. It's late. I
Yeah,
didn't realize how much time went by. But no, thank you so much again. I appreciate
yeah,
it for the opportunity, and just praying for your health and strength that God continues to bless you as you're stepping out. The strong shall survive. We'll continue standing. Just keep standing, and as we're standing, keep looking to the hills from which come our help.
amen. All right, brother. Well, thank you.
All
and
right.
we'll talk later.
All right. God bless you.
All right.
Take care.
God bless.